Could you please do a roll call?
And Councilmember Polito,
There's Diana. Yay.
Here.
Councilmember Hawkins, I see she just joined, so we'll let her get ready to go. Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
Yes.
and Mayor DeGolia.
Yes,
Thank you.
and we have Diana here also.
Yes.
I inadvertently skipped the Pledge of Allegiance, so since Anthony has the flag on his image, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation under God,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all. Okay. Are there any public comments? Yes, Ann.
I have a question of order.
Sure.
So I sent in an email to the council members with an attachment, and I believe that was sort of my public comment. I guess my only question is, should I mention that here or wait until the specific items that it relates to?
I'd like to remind the council that was for the council committee's appointment on the Audit and Finance Committee.
Right. And
I also have a comment though on something before that, which is when you're looking at amending the committee rules.
You can give a public comment either here or at the specific item when it comes up. Normally, you would give it when the item comes up, but
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. I just, I don't know all the ins and outs of this.
no problem.
Format. I'll wait. Thank you.
We're quite flexible. Okay, I don't see any other public comments. If anyone has a public comment, they can click the reactions button at the bottom of the screen. Let's move on. So the next item would be the presentation from the library, but I don't see Tamika on the line.
Nor do I. The
Okay,
PowerPoint.
well, no problem. We can come back to her and pick it up later. Let's go on and do the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I did meet with members of the council prior to the meeting to address any questions. There were a couple of minor things, but I and staff are here to answer any questions the council may have regarding the written report.
Any questions on the report or any of the attachments to the report? Okay, I don't see any. We have a consent calendar, which are items 6 through 11. Would any member of the council or the public like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Ann?
If I'm allowed to, as I mentioned, I would like to pull item 8 from the consent calendar so we could discuss potential addition to the proposed amendment.
Okay, that's fine. We'll do that. Anyone else? Can I get a motion to approve items 6, 7, 9, 10, and 11?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Polito,
Aye.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
Yes.
and Mayor DeGolia.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we go to item 8, which was in the consent calendar to approve a revision to the resolution governing town committees and commission to allow the mayor to appoint not just the mayor and the vice mayor to the Audit and Finance Committee, but to be able to appoint anyone from the council if the mayor chose not to appoint the mayor, vice mayor to that committee. So that issue is before us. And Anne has raised the issue in an email about the size of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Did you want me to say something, Rick, or?
Sure. What, you asked to have it pulled. I think that it would be fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I just, it was a suggestion that came to me, or thought that came to me when I was through the applications for the Audit and Finance Committee. And I realized that we have an embarrassment of riches and that we have 3 candidates for a single vacancy, which, I mean, it's great, but frankly, as the current Audit Committee Chair, I would be very pleased to have any of them and all of them on the committee. So I wanted to raise it for the council's consideration as to whether it might be appropriate to increase the size of the Audit and Finance Committee from 5 to 7. I note that the Rail Committee is already at 7, and I don't know if they've had any problems related to that in terms of getting a quorum or anything. I just don't know that data. But it's just a thought for consideration. And if you think it's not right for discussion now, I would like to raise it again when I'd like to think about it before we go out for the normal annual committee appointments, because I would love to take all these folks on. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment on this? Or is there any questions from members of the council on it? Okay, comments from members of the council? Okay, Bill?
Yeah, when you make the committee bigger, then the quorum needs to be larger. And yes, we have an embarrassment of riches this time, but that's not always the case. I personally, I think 5 is an effective number. When I was either mayor or vice mayor, I forget which time, there was one member that never showed up, and then there had to be a change to remove him from the council or from the committee. It's circumstantial that we have this situation right now, and I think that expanding the committee, it seems to be working very well and has been working very well for the last couple of years. So I'm not in favor of expanding it, based on a situational, item.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Bob.
I concur wholeheartedly with what Bill said. We've, over the 10 years or so I've been doing this, we often had quorum problems. This makes it worse, number one. Number two, too many cooks spoil the broth and also lengthen the meetings, not necessarily in an advantageous way. So I would oppose increasing the number from 5 to 7.
Well, if I'm permitted to, I would withdraw the request.
No,
then.
no, wait.
No, it's a valid,
Yeah.
it's a very valid request, and it's not an advocacy issue. It's a sharing of thoughts issue. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So my sentiments are, well, they're twofold. They're very much in line with what Anne was saying, that we seem to have an embarrassment of riches at this point in time with such qualified residents wanting to serve on our Audit and Finance Committee. On the other hand, I have experienced what Vice Mayor had raised about sometimes it was hard to get a quorum, because we used to have on the Environmental Programs Committee up to 7 or 9, and we didn't, we had a hard time getting a quorum, and now we're having a hard time even getting people to want to be on the Environmental Programs Committee. But this is a publicly noticed meeting, the Audit and Finance Committee. Any member of the public can attend and be in attendance and hear and see and have an opportunity to, make a comment and express your opinions. While you're not a voting member, you are still just like coming to a council meeting. You have an opportunity to see what's going on and know what's happening and voice your opinions. So if I would recommend let's keep it at 5. It's more manageable. A committee of 5 is a very, standard and manageable number to have opinions and to vote on. So that's my feeling.
Thank you. I share your perspective and both of the other members' concern. I know that the subject matter of the Audit and Finance Committee is absolutely fascinating. And it's something that I am extremely pleased that we have 3 people who are all very qualified that have applied for it with a focus on each of their nuanced strengths. And I'm happy for that. And so I think it's a fair request, and I'm glad that you made it, Ann, because I think it's a good discussion and it's a good thing to consider. I do wish that we'd had these members apply earlier because we have had some trouble on that committee, and notwithstanding the fascinating subject matter, I think now that we have the multiple applications, I would strongly encourage those that have applied to attend the meeting, whether they're on the committee formally or not. It really doesn't matter. The fact is you can participate, just as Elizabeth said, and I think you can do so quite effectively. And that is one committee that doesn't get much public participation, so it would be extremely welcome. And I think that given the opinions that have been expressed, we probably don't need to take a vote. But we do need to approve the proposed amendment to the resolution governing town committees and commissions. And if I could get a motion to approve, I would appreciate it.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Polito,
Aye.
Hawkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
He's muted, but he said aye. And I will say aye also.
thank you, sir.
Aye.
Okay. So that we're now moving on to item 12, which is a discussion regarding the proposed modification of the hours for right turn on red restrictions at Middlefield Road and Oak Grove Avenue intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'll do a brief introduction. Then if the council has any questions or needs some additional information, staff's here to do that. This item has been before the Transportation Committee and the council on a couple of occasions. And at the last time, I think it was in September, the council asked for some pedestrian data and turning movement data and accident information in more detail. Staff brought that information as part of this report with some kind of hard to interpret tables. They're just a little complicated. I had trouble with them as well. I spoke with a couple of council members who had trouble with them as well. And Robert can go into them and kind of walk the council how they operate if you wish. However, bottom line, after that analysis and review, staff's recommendation is that there be no changes from how it's currently in the field today with respect to the turn restriction. So that means it wouldn't be 7 to 7. It wouldn't be any other adjustment. It would remain 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. So that's the recommendation, that it stay as is, as it currently is in the field. So with that, I mean, staff's here to answer any questions on any of the data or any of those tables in there if you want to go through them. But the recommendation is no change.
Great. Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the council have a question for staff? Okay, I don't see any questions. I'll take public comment, and I have a public comment from Carol Collins. Carol, you can unmute yourself and give your comment.
Yes, Carol Collins on 78 Deodore Drive. I was trying to put my video, but anyway. I was one who brought this up to the Transportation Committee because the signs basically are outdated, and I think the police department would agree they're pretty unenforceable given the odd hours. And I think basically everybody's giving in to the people that live nearby and didn't want to see changes to the hours. And I'm disappointed because I think it's a general public safety issue in that very tight intersection that sees a lot of traffic. So I'm very disappointed that it's not switching to no right turn, like 7 to 7 or something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Again, if anyone has public comment, they can click the reaction button on the bottom of the screen and raise your hand and let us know. And I see Jerry Lugers is giving a comment. Please, Jerry.
Yes, I support the recommendation of the staff that there be no change.
Okay,
That's
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other public comment. I'll bring it back to the committee. Comment from members of the council. Bill.
Yeah, I support, as you know, from the last time we had the discussion, when we looked at the accident data and everything, I support the staff's recommendation that we have no change at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I agree with that also, Bill. Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the staff's recommendation to not make a change at Oak Grove.
Okay, I'm not sure that's an action item if we're not making a change. But
Well,
Just be direction to staff to retain the hours as in the field now.
correct.
okay. If anyone on the council disagrees with that, could you please let us know? I don't see any disagreement. I don't think we have to vote on that, but I think that's the direction. It looks like everyone agrees. Let's move on to item 13, which is the consideration of appointment for the open position on the Audit and Finance Committee. And there would be a consideration of an appointment for the Environmental Programs Committee, but we don't have anyone who applied.
Unless the unappointed candidates, if there are any this evening, want to switch. But with that, it's a review of the applications. There's one vacancy on the Audit and Finance Committee for a term that does expire in June of 2022. That particular candidate would need to reapply at that point for the next iteration of the term. You have 3 applicants, Stephen Brickley, Thomas Hill, and Stacy Miles. I believe some are in the audience tonight, and the council is welcome to ask any questions of the applicants or have them speak. And following that, make a recommendation for appointment.
Right.
If I could just make a quick note, I got an email from Stacy. She had a family matter she had to attend to, so she unfortunately won't be able to join this evening. But
Okay.
Through the chair, I just want to make a point that Stacy is on the Environmental Programs Committee. So,
You couldn't switch.
so yeah, she can't switch, but somebody could join her for sure.
Okay. Okay, would either of the candidates that are on the call like to speak to the council? I see Steve shaking his head. So why don't you go first, Steve, and then I'll ask Tom.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee. I appreciate you guys thinking that we're embarrassment of riches. I hope that I'm in that club. We don't always feel that way. I'll give you just a short version of myself, and then I have a comment on it. First, thanks for thinking of moving it from 5 to 7. We're a family of 6 with a dog, that makes 7. So I know how unruly that 7 members can be. We just moved to Atherton in June of 2021, so I'm brand new. I don't think an opening came up between then and now, but I didn't have a chance to apply it then. Had it, I would have. My background is born and raised in San Francisco. Work experience was I worked for Wells Fargo for 3 years as a management trainee. In 1985, I became a CPA. I worked for KPMG. At the same time, I was working for KPMG in audit and tax. I also established my own CPA firm. Eventually, in 1989, I went out on my own with the CPA firm in audit and tax. And in 99, 10 years later, I added investment advisory to that. Fast forward to now, there's 6 of us. So we have 2 firms. We have a CPA firm with about 100 individuals in trusts where we prepare tax, do planning, state trust planning. We have an investment advisory firm where we manage about $700 million of people's money. The relevant experience there isn't so much just that I'm a CPA that we manage money. It's that in doing that, we also have defined benefit plans as an example. As clients, we have 3 of them. So I'm familiar, and we have one ourselves. So I'm familiar more than I care to be about normal costs, about discount rates, about investment return, about managing the assets, risk, leverage, and so forth. So defined benefit plans are nothing new to me, and they're very similar to the DB plan that you guys have that we have at CalPERS. The other relevant experience that I have is that I do the budgeting for the firm. So we keep a current budget, monthly budget, yearly. We have a disaster plan that's in there too. So budgeting is nothing really that new to me. And finally, our firm is audited. So we do have an audit that occurs from an outside CPA firm. It's not a full scope audit like the city would have, but it is an audit, and we do manage that. Having said all that, and maybe this is a surprise, I'm actually going to withdraw my application. I think that Tom, with his experience and so many years, not only would be better at it, but really is more deserving than somebody who just pulled up in the bus in June. So having said that, if you accept my withdrawing it, if another opening comes up, I'll be happy to reapply.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Tom, would you like to address the council?
First of all, thank you. I'm very surprised, of course, and I don't know Steve, but if I am selected and you do reapply, I hope to get to know you. I'm a CPA in retired status. I never worked for a CPA firm other than right out of business school, where I worked for Arthur Andersen, and in their consulting division primarily. They're the predecessor of Accenture. I did enough time to be able to qualify to be a CPA, and then after that, basically was a CFO of small companies. This is the second time I'm applying. I applied in June, and certainly the reappointment of the 2 people to the committee made perfect sense. But I'm still interested in doing it. And what I would emphasize is I'm retired. I have modest demands on my time. I will spend as much time as it takes to basically always be on top of what is before the committee. I don't have government pension accounting experience. I've done some reading in the last several days and in June, and it is complicated, but basically we're talking about a discounted present value sort of analysis. And that's something that is one of the core concepts drilled into you in an MBA program. And that plus being an accountant I believe I can come up to speed rapidly.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Are there any comments from members of the council?
I'll go. But first off, Stephen, you're very qualified, and but I appreciate the fact that you've made the decision and you announced it today, and I do hope that you reapply. I understand, Tom, you've got a substantial amount of experience with the Lindenwood Homeowners Association as well, so you have a great following there. So appreciate both of you guys applying, but I guess my support would be with Tom at this point in time.
Thank you. I did want to say, although I'm acquainted with Rick, I haven't met the rest of you, but I feel I know you in a way, because part of being on the board of the Lindenwood Homes Association is a responsibility to either attend or view the council meetings. So I've spent a fair amount of time over the past couple of years watching you in action.
Right.
Mainly on the YouTube channel that the town posts its videos to.
Yeah. Good. Well, it also makes it easier that we're able to get into these meetings remotely. You can be in Hawaii and still attend.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Look at that.
Imagine that.
I will.
The chair.
Yeah.
May I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to acknowledge that, Stacy, I'm sorry that she's not here. She's highly qualified also. She's relatively new to volunteering, and she's been a great volunteer committee member for the environmental programs. And I was kind of surprised to see her put her hat in the ring for this, because, not many people want to get on two, unelecteds not want to get on two or more volunteer committees for the town. So I really acknowledge Stacy's energy, and and Steve, I've met you before and have enjoyed your company, and I am so hopeful that you will become more involved in the town, because the town really needs good volunteers and depends on its residents for helping us be the town that we really are. So thank you. My support is going to go to Tom. I know that he's done a lot for the Lindenwood Homes Association, and has been he's made application before, so he kind of came back up to the plate, and you're swinging again. So thank you.
Thank you. Let me just see if there's any public comment on this matter. Anne.
I just basically wanted to echo what already has been said by Vice Mayor Widmer and Councilwoman Lewis. And that is, thank you so much, both of you who are here, for applying. You're both very, very qualified. And Stephen, I really do hope that we will see you again as a guest at our meetings, or hopefully in the future as a voting member. We can certainly use your help. But I would like to say that I support Tom Hill as the first choice for the committee, in part because I do know that Stacy is already on the Environmental Programs Committee, which unfortunately does not have an embarrassment of riches. And I would hate to see what she's doing for them get diluted by being on two committees. So she may be perfectly capable. I'm not saying she's not, but I also feel that both Tom and Steve have considerably more financial experience that's directly relevant to our committee. That's all.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I don't see any. I'll just say it. Reapplying is a really good thing. And I thank Tom for reapplying. And I know you will have the opportunity, Steve, and I hope you will attend the committee meetings in person and not just viewing the tape afterward, if you have the chance. I know that you'll be a welcome participant.
Thank you.
And I will call for a motion.
I'd like to nominate Tom to take the open position on the Finance and Audit Committee.
Great,
Yeah, second.
thank you.
Mr. Polito.
Roll call.
Yes, please.
So just to reiterate, we have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Thomas Hill to the Audit and Finance Committee to serve the unexpired term set to expire this June 30th, 2022. Councilmember Polito,
Aye.
Hawkins,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
Aye.
and Mayor DeGolia.
Aye.
And just, Anthony, maybe you can just really be clear. He's filling in the interim from now until June, but in June, there's
You
more.
can certainly reapply.
Yeah.
Sir.
Got to run again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us, Tom and Steve. You're welcome to stay if you like. We are moving on to the next item, which is to discuss the town center update for activities and essentially reassessing the master plan that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You took the words right out of my mouth. We have a master plan for the town center that was largely focused on development and construction. We put together that master plan in 2014. We're approaching completion of the town center, fingers crossed, in the next month or so. And hopefully by the time this is complete, we'll have the there that we've been looking for as part of that original master plan. So I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to the council a little bit about expectations for the project site in terms of its use and opportunities going forward. And maybe we could put together another master plan for the area that's focused on uses and opportunities going forward. And largely in three areas I wanted to talk to the council about this evening. The first is uses and activities. What do we want to see going on here? What types of events do you feel are appropriate in broad strokes, not specifics? Public events versus private rental, town sponsored or private rental types events. I'll talk about any of those potential conflicts that we might see in those, and what challenges do we have on site we need to make sure we address as we allow those in that area. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the physical plant of the site. Once it's fully completed, we still have some areas we need to focus on. Some of that is the corporation yard, for example. When the project was originally conceived, the idea was to wrap in the corporation yard and enhance that space as well. There was actually solar design for that particular section. But as the project evolved and the costs came to reality, we removed that from the project site and left the corporation yard as is, but we do need to eventually address that. And then also solar for the site, potential additional EV charging stations, or the pursuit of a microgrid. Do you want to see staff focus some time on that? And then the last point I want to talk about is oversight. Staff recommends that the town center be managed by administration and the library, and that town events take precedent over private events and activities. That's the way it functions at the park. We'd like to see that function that way here as well, with the town responsible for any types of events that are organized for the area, with the exception of those that are included for the library. So those are the three broad stroke areas I wanted to talk about a little bit, and perhaps via the mayor, we could help lead that conversation in those three functional areas. Give me some feedback, and then from there, I'll take it out and work on a use and opportunities plan that I could return to the council at a future date for consideration of adoption. That's basically the staff report.
Okay, thank you. And I think you laid some of the details in those three areas out very well in your preparatory email leading up to the meeting tonight. So I think addressing it in those three areas is a good way to do it. Let me see if there are any questions from members of the council. Diana.
Yeah, I'm curious if, and I didn't get a chance to ask George's question earlier, if the cafe in the area immediately in front of the cafe, is that part of what would be the city? Or is that part of what the library would be able to control or rent?
So the community porch or deck in front of the cafe is town property, even though it's a library area. It's town owned and town operated. So, and the cafe would be a lease or licensee through the town, not through the library. So that would be ours as well. That said, if the library were having an activity or event that they would probably move out onto that deck to conduct the event, they'd have the right to do that as well.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any questions right now. If anyone has a question as we move on, don't hesitate to bring it up. Let me see if there's any public comment on this matter.
And I don't see any hands, Mayor.
No, I don't either. Okay, thank you. Let's bring it back. Let's talk about the area of uses and activities, including just broad stroke, what kind of events would you like to see in the space? How much of the space would you like to see used? Would you like to see it available for private rental like the park is, or not? Those kinds of issues. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that the list that we had here was pretty good. You know, a farmer's market seems like it might be, it was well attended when we had it. You know, my only comment on a farmer's market is I would want to see a farmer's market that was self-funding as opposed to, you know, Atherton now paid for the last one. I think, you know, if there's like chamber music or something like that at the park or at the civic court, that would be nice. I'm sure that'd be a nice quiet area for that. But, you know, the large concerts that we have, hopefully they get larger, you know, I think are more appropriate for the park. You know, dinners or some community gatherings, like, for example, at the end of the year when we have our little celebration party, that should be, you know, at the civic court, obviously. The art shows and the plein air art, I thought was good ideas. I'd like to see the city maintain ownership and control of that. I don't think it's appropriate to put it into a different area and have it rented out. You know, the city's got things going on. People are going to have to go visit the police department, you know, essentially all hours of the day and night, as well as 7 days a week. So I think it's inappropriate to have, you know, other little activities going on that aren't, you know, town organized or library organized.
Okay, thank you. Bob.
Well, I disagree a little bit, but the control issue is kind of a big thing. I think it would be criminal to have that fabulous facility not be used frequently and often in ways that benefit the community. And so I would support any and all of these activities so long as they're not disruptive to the functioning of the city and the city staff.
Well, let me make a comment. I agree with that. The one qualification I'd say is I really think it's important that we find a vendor for the cafe. I think the cafe is a wonderful opportunity for the town. When we did the master plan for the town center, we got lots and lots of repeated comments as we went to people's houses and reached out to ask people what they wanted. People really want to have a place to come and have coffee or tea with their friends and not have to go to Menlo Park or Redwood City to one of the cafes there. So I'm aware that the cafe is a very small structure and that would necessitate a vendor to use the chairs and tables that we've planned for on the deck outside between the library and the historic town hall outside the cafe area. I'm also aware that when we did the RFP the last time, we didn't get a response, partly because it was small. And one of the ideas floated by the potential vendors were that they would want to be able to do or have the ability to do private events. And if that's a condition for them, I want to be sensitive to that. I don't want that to control things. So I think what George has said in terms of private versus public, I think the public has to take precedence. That's what it's about, and that's who the facilities are for. But I am open to working something out with a vendor to enable them to have some private events, not an overwhelming number, but a number of private events that would be attractive to them, and not interfere with our use and access and the staff's use, as Bob just mentioned, to the general area. I'm not saying that to make that be like the central focus. I don't think that should be the central focus. I think that the general kinds of activities that have been mentioned are attractive. And this is an opportunity for us to pull residents together with a facility that we didn't previously have. And I hope that it will succeed, and I want to see it used. Elizabeth, I know you have some comments that you've thought about this a lot.
So Rick, you're putting me on the spot. I have thought about it a lot, and there is so much opportunity for the public benefit in what we have created with the civic court plaza area, with the library deck, the little cafe. The little cafe needs a special operator with some vision, but we're going to help the little cafe get going. And it's been a couple of weeks since I've been to the site. So every week that goes by, it gets better and better. So I'm looking forward to seeing the progress that has been made with the landscaping, and so that you can get a look and feel and a scale of what we have to work for. It's one thing to look at the plan and to see what it's like on the drawing or the architectural renderings. It's another thing to actually be in the environment and under the oak trees, under the deodar, pines and redwoods, and to get a sense of, okay, what will really work. I just think, I'm not going to throw out a whole list of ideas. Vice Mayor Widmer, read the list of ideas, and all those are really good. And I think that we can, focus on any number of them. But I think there's going to be more once we, are able to really experience the environment. But I truly do believe that public events and what the public can come to, without charge, that they can participate in, I think is something that we need to focus on. I can't imagine that the cafe owners would want to hold private events on the deck from their cafe, like a catering, because the cafe won't, support a lot of service, food and beverage, I think. Anyway, I could be mistaken. So I'm anxious to see it all finished.
Okay, thank you. Diana.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said so far. I'd like to see it used as much, the priority being toward public events and maybe secondarily private. I'm concerned about how we would manage it. So if somebody, for example, the Pacific Clean Energy wanted to do meetings in the council chamber, because we're going to have this nice facility to do both live Zoom and in person, which is a very valuable resource that some of our groups might be interested in, or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or any number of different groups. But I'm wondering how they would apply to use it. Right now, I think we were talking about who's going to control it, and that's the part I'm not clear on. And I'm not, also, it's so early in the process, I don't know what kind of demand we're going to have for all the spaces. We have spaces in the library and spaces in the park. So it's not, so I don't want to limit anything this early on until we start to see how the usage patterns are going to be.
Exactly. Well, I just want to maybe respond to Councilmember Hawkins Van Wellian about who's going to be in charge and stuff. I think for the spaces inside the library or even inside the historic town hall, which is a library oriented programming environment, that is under the library's purview. It would not be under the town of Atherton's purview, because that is their, I mean, they've paid for it. That's their venues and they would have to manage it. All the other things, I think we'd probably set it up sort of how we do park reservations if we were going to reach out to the public for scheduling or reserving the civic court or the council chambers for an evening, and it can't conflict with any other public event that we would be having. And that would have to be managed through our town staff.
Yes.
I
So
see.
that's an oversight issue, which is the
Yeah.
third subject area.
Okay,
So
sorry.
We'll get to that. No
Jumped
problem.
ahead.
Bill has a comment.
You're muted, Bill.
Sorry about that. With regards to the cafe and private events held by the cafe, for something like that to happen on, they'd be having the private event on the patio, which is part of the library.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah. So they would have to coordinate that with the library. The library may have an event going on as well. So, I would like to see the people that run the cafe, and we're going to talk about that in the next issue and the next item. I'd like to see them as successful as possible, and they did express, like, for example, our current park caterer did express to Elizabeth and I when we, were over there, some of their concerns and things like that. So, I think that we want to make sure that they're successful, whoever they are. But I just think that there would need to be coordination, especially since the cafe is in the old civic council chambers, and that's part of the library now, and the patio or the deck out there is part of the library as well. So the library has to control that.
No, but I think we're controlling the cafe, Bill.
Well, we can control the cafe, but we can't have somebody. They would plan to have their own, event that they're bringing in other people that aren't associated.
And I just don't see
that.
that. I don't see that would be something that we would allow the cafe operator to do.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, I agree with you.
Right.
Okay, George.
And so as you guys talk about this, I'm taking very copious notes here, but we seem to also be shifting into some of the constraints and concerns with this distinction between public and private events. And as we release the reins and allow private activities to occur, I think it's important to think about, the town center was public money, but was also private donations to these areas and spaces. And we're going to have donor plaques out there. And sometimes donors may feel that their space being used for a private, ceremony of some kind or event of some kind, not related to the town, not a town resident, they may have issues with that. It's private money and public money. And then also we've had partners in this development project over the last 2.5 to 3 years. And those partners have been this neighborhood, which is a lot closer to what goes on here than it is in the park. And
Mhm.
so noise, parking, activities in the evening hours, whether it's, laughing, talking and that sort of stuff, or, people leaving at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, could be of concern for them as well.
Good
Good
point.
point. Very good point.
Mhm.
Well, I think, again, George, I know that you like to get ahead of the game and, you are a planner and I love that about you and you think ahead, I just am not sure that we're kind of there. I mean, how time sensitive is all of this? I mean, I think the discussion is good and we
Mhm.
need to have more discussion and, we may even need, a little public, reach out to, kind of get some of our other public residents, their ideas. But I think we need to be able to walk and feel the environment before we can visualize what can be done. And I just haven't been able to do that. I mean, I don't think it's done enough. I look at the plan and I can see, but how big is this really? How, because the police building just got torn down 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I don't know. I think that's right. I think we will have a different perspective when we can walk through it and we can sit in the council chambers. We can sit now in the lobby. We can get a feel for that. I can imagine that that we would want to do an event in the lobby. We've talked about doing it as a thank you for donors, or donors may want to rent it to thank donors if the council doesn't do it. I can imagine that the council chambers is something that somebody may want to rent to use at a time where we're not using it. Peninsula Clean Energy has asked me about that because the council chambers will have the ability to support hybrid meetings. And Peninsula Clean Energy's current facility isn't big enough for its 25 board member group and doesn't have the capability to host hybrid meetings. So I think that's something that we should consider. We should make in the course of the planning that George is talking about for use in activities. I think that's a valid activity for us to use that facility for, as long as it doesn't conflict with the plans that we have. And I think we do need to be cognizant of the fact that we're very close to the neighborhood and to people who live in that neighborhood. And I'm sure that does not have to be a conflict. That's something we can manage.
No, that's kind of a meeting thing. So what about if somebody wanted to have a small wedding and get married in the council chambers with the justice of the peace or something, or just, and then have a little reception in the portico and out in under the oak trees and in the plaza for 2 or 3 hours. I mean, not like a raucous, something, it'd have to be managed. I mean, I can see somebody maybe wanting to do that because it's so beautiful, but you certainly wouldn't want to have dancing and, lots of food and alcohol and loud music. I mean, I think there would have to be some boundaries and criteria. I don't know.
Well, one of the other agencies that I've worked for over the years, we had a lot of park venues. Some of them were closer to neighbors than others. And so for each particular venue, there were use guidelines that were established. So if you wanted to have something at the particular house, you could only have events there, Monday through Friday until 7 p.m. at night, or if it was going to be at something that was a little farther away, you could have different types of events there and you could have them on the weekend. So sort of use guidelines is what we look to develop for these types of things in this particular venue space. For PCE or ADAPT or any other community organization that wanted to have their board meetings here on a regular basis, we just develop a use agreement for them and get that approved, and they'd have their specific guidelines for their activities and they'd be set meetings and times. Agencies do that. San Carlos, rents some of their space to rethink waste, so those things are pretty common for public agencies and boards. but it's the private.
Rethink Waste, Rethink Waste is in the library. It's not
Yeah.
in the council chambers.
Yeah, in the library, above the library, that's right. But they're pretty common for public agencies. It's the private events in these sorts of venues that are harder to manage.
Yeah, government, I'm in favor of government or quasi-government organizations, including, I would include ADAP and as well as PCE, as well as, the Council of Cities and things like that. Yeah, for sure. They should be able to make arrangements to have a meeting in our council chambers or dinner or something like that, for sure. I think that would be appropriate.
Can I just note, Mayor, that resident Alex Key joined late and he missed open a public comment and wanted to make one.
Okay. Alex, if you'd like to make a public comment, you could make that now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to say if, as part of the use and opportunities evaluation, if the town could not preclude, let me just say it more clearly. A lot of residents around my area, around Maple, we'd be happy if the courtyard were combined, say, with into another area, such as at the Holbrook Palmer Park courtyard. And so, if we realize the corporation yard at the Civic Center is getting quite old, refurbishment would probably mean that the courtyard probably would be around for a longer while. But if sometime in the medium term or maybe long term, we could think about moving the courtyard activities out of the neighborhood, I think most of the residents around the area would like that. So I know you guys are discussing the use and opportunities of the possible area, and corporation yard is part of that. So wanted to just put that forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, does anyone else on the council have any other comment on the use and activities? We've kind of aired that. I think this is going to be a moving target. As we move in, we're clearly going to have more discussion about this, but I think it's been a good start. And I'd like to spend a few minutes on the physical plant, which Alex's comment goes to. Anybody have any comment on that? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I agree with Alex. Every time I talk to city manager, I say, let's move the court. I mean, and I know all the reasons why we didn't move the courtyard in the beginning, because of money and expense, and everything was focused on just the town center. But it really would be nice to, and we've got this building that was built actually right before my time, but it's the $1 million building that they built, this sheet metal building there. And I don't know, it's just such an eyesore. I'd love to be able to do something. And so where else would we put it? The park? Well, I don't know. And then you have all the big trucks driving in and out of the park. But right now you've got all the trucks driving in and out of residential streets past people's homes. So I think bright minds should be put together and come up with a plan.
Okay. Bill.
Yeah, if we're going to move something to the park, I would want to know, what the size requirements are and things like that. There's only so much space in our park. And I realize right next to it is kind of wilderness area, so or treat area that it has nothing in it. But we don't want to do permanent things in the park unless we have to. And I wouldn't want to have another metal building right next to the one that we have, next to our carriage house that actually is a historical facility. And hopefully over some time in the future, if there's money raised for it, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but if there were, refurbish that. So I would really, I would want to see what the plan is and what the facility requirements are before we would decide to move more hardscape into the park.
Vice Mayor, that's exactly what I said. We need to put our brightest minds together and try to figure something out, okay? I wasn't saying to put it next to the carriage house, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, on the subject of the courtyard, I'd say the reason that it hasn't been moved to the park wasn't because of cost. It was because the people that used the park and the Park and Rec Committee didn't want an expansion of the courtyard in the park. And that was considered when we started the planning for the master plan for the town center. And there was a good deal of debate about it. And it was vociferously opposed by the Park and Rec Committee members and by others that use the park. So I think to move the entire courtyard to the park will not be something that will get a lot of support. And not the least of which is what Bill mentioned about putting another building where the current courtyard is. Even if we use the current courtyard building, which I think when we looked at it, we assessed that and we decided it wasn't big enough to manage the needs that the current courtyard satisfies. So I think it's a very controversial thing. I think there is probably some adjustments that we can make. There probably are some things that can be moved to the current courtyard facility in the park without bringing heavy equipment into the park. But I think it is would be difficult to move the entire courtyard. And I was one that supported that before, but I observed the resident response to that, which was quite strong. I will just comment on a couple other things that were included in the physical plant discussion. One question was, should we have additional EV charging stations? I don't recall exactly how many. I think we've planned for 4 EV charging stations, 6. Once the parking has been built out next to the civic court, and there are several there, and I think there were 2 over next to the library. And I think that to the extent we can get those charging stations paid for by BACMed or by the PCE program. PCE has worked out a program with the state of California to put 3,600 charging stations in San Mateo County. And to the extent we could do that, I think that it would be good. I don't have a really good judgment about whether 6 is an inadequate number. I definitely think there should be a couple charging stations in the police parking facility so that staff members can drive electric cars and have them charged. The other question that came up was about solar panels. This facility, these 2 buildings are designed to be zero net energy. They're really well-designed buildings, but they cannot be zero net energy without having solar, which is the only way to get the power other than to buy it from PCE. And they're plumb for the power. I'd love to see us, once we have the funds, to put solar panels on these buildings and on carports. I think it makes all the sense in the world. We'll do a PPA. I think PCE is considering that. And it would be cheaper for the town to buy electricity through that PPA than we're going to be paying to PCE. That's the way PPAs work. So I think we should look at that as we can do it. I don't see any reason not to do it. It makes every sense in the world to me. I don't think that they will. That solar panels on carports, that they'll only benefit people because it'll generate energy for us and it'll generate shade for the people that park under them. And with respect to a microgrid, I mean, microgrid's a great idea. We have PSPS events that haven't impacted Atherton, so we're not in the risk spot like Portola Valley or Woodside are, but you never know, the grid could go down. I'd love us to be able to be off the grid and to be off the grid without having to burn diesel fuel, which I don't think is desirable. Diana, you have your hand up.
I just want to say that I strongly agree with everything you just said. And I think that we should really explore that as part of our next phase development of our physical plant. And I could picture a really beautiful carport that would be used primarily for charging vehicles. But if there were enough excess, that we create a Tesla wall or some other battery storage so that we store any extra that we have, and then have it be a backup to the, I wish we had gotten a microgrid, solar microgrid, but I think we should start planning for that going for in the future, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also that I think that the diesel generators are eventually going to be banned. So we're going to have to switch over anyway. And since this is this should be part of our long-term planning.
Bill.
Yeah. First off, you make a good point. We've wired everything, got everything set up for solar. I don't have an issue with that. We have looked at this before, and so I would want to see, you know, the breakdown and the finances on it before we go forward. I'm in agreement. In fact, I had suggested when we were first looking at the overall designs that we put carports with solar on them. That was long before we ended up starting to cut things out. And those were one of the first things that went. So as far as EV charging stations, yeah, I'm not sure that 6 is enough. And I don't know, I thought we were putting 1 or 2 in the park, and I don't know what ended up happening with that. Maybe they're coming with the refurbishment of the park, but I would hope that we still at least get 2 in the park. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the physical plant issues? If not, we'll turn for a quick discussion on the oversight. I have Diana, then Bob.
There's been no mention so far of the potential rail museum that we have in the works. And somehow that is a use of this space as well. It's a public use. So at least we should throw that out there, because that is something that's in the works.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, this corporation yard thing seems like it needs a lot of work. I would kind of echo Elizabeth's suggestion that we maybe form an ad hoc committee to dig into that, along with staff support and maybe neighborhood input. I mean, my first thought, of course, is that where the corporation yard is, and for that matter, where we put up the police storage buildings and where the train station museum or whatever you're calling it is going to be, is not exactly the most desirable acreage in the town of Atherton, next to the railroad tracks. So it seems to me that that's not the worst spot to have something like a corporation yard, but I'm not in, you know, I don't live there. I'm not in tune with the neighborhood, and I'm certainly not knowledgeable about our real needs there, but I think it needs to be investigated pretty thoroughly. And so I think an ad hoc committee might be appropriate. That's up to you, Rick.
Okay, great. Thanks. I think that's a good suggestion. Okay, I don't see any other comments on the physical plant. If there's an additional public comment, I could take it, but I would like to spend a few minutes on the oversight question. Just to refresh everyone on the council, the question of the oversight is how would we manage the facility in the park, we have a vendor who schedules events in the park, and the Park and Rec Committee has asked the question of whether they would participate in the oversight of the town center open space, which is part of where this question came from, but it's a valid question independent of that. Bill.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a Park and Rec Committee oversight thing. As far as coordinating things, obviously our vendor in the park has, they've taken on the responsibility for scheduling things and making sure the fee structures, if we decide to have those type of activities there, are there, and then that person also coordinates with the town. So I would say the way the library is going to handle their own stuff. If we choose to have events that need coordination, then we can have our caterer handle that, and then they would coordinate that with Francesca or somebody, Anthony or somebody, but not Park and Rec.
Okay. Other comments? Well, I'll give a comment. I agree with Bill about, I think it's not appropriate for Park and Rec. I think if Park and Rec in the course of managing the park have any comments about the open space for the town center area, that those would be welcomed by the council, and we should encourage them to voice any comments they may have. But in terms of managing, I don't think it's appropriate for it to be managed by Park and Rec. I would think that if there are going to be private events that or events from another public agency, for example, renting the council chambers or renting some other area in the physical plant, not in the library, that should be coordinated with staff, and we should have a staff member who would sort of take the front for that. And if that request was, for example, outside the cafe on the deck, then that would obviously need to be coordinated with the library. And the same could be true with the historic council chambers, though that's an independent building. Well, it is part of the library. It also has the Historic Association in it. And I can imagine that at some point, somebody would want to rent that facility when the library is not open. And I would think that that staff person for the staff could manage that. I think that, George, you should make a proposal about who would be best to do that from the staff side. I don't think your direction would be valuable there.
I can certainly do that. I think there's a lot to consider with this one, and it really hinges on the public-private event conversation that the council had a little bit ago and how that plays out. And I also want to echo Councilmember Lewis's comment that, and I think Diana's as well, that we don't exactly know how this facility is going to be used in the long term. We need to see it fully complete. We need to try out a few things and see if they work or don't work before we, focus on one particular path. But it's going to hinge, I think, on the public and private component of it. We don't want to have something booked by a park vendor that's a private event that goes on in the civic court, and we can't have the public coming into the lobby and making their way over to the library without going through that event. So there's going to be a lot of coordination that goes on. This site's open 24/7. So,
Through the mayor.
Yes.
I'll just tag on to what city manager was saying, is that, we're learning to walk before we run, and we don't, I would hate for us to have to put the cart before the horse. And we'll know more as we go along if it becomes overwhelming for our internal staff to kind of manage some of these requests or facilities or appointments in areas. And, you know, I think that we're all very attentive to that, and George and staff and, you know, Robert and Anthony, you know, they'll quickly, you know, feel if it's going to get out of hand, and then we'll have to make another contingency plan.
Great. Okay. That sounds good. I think that's a good amount of direction. And I think once we've got it fully open, you can come back to us, George, and we'll have another crack at discussing these issues. That these are not going to be solved overnight.
I agree. I will.
Okay, I think we can move on. Given that the discussion of the cafe is somewhat related to this, I think we should move into item 15. I know that Tamika Price is here for the library presentation, but I'd just as soon finish off this item since it's so closely related, and then we'll get that a presentation, if that's okay with you, Tamika.
Yes, that's fine.
Great. Okay, so let's move to item 15. Item 15 is a proposal to authorize the release of an RFP for operations at the library cafe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You've seen this before. So we're bringing this back to re-release it with a couple of modifications to it in the background section related to the number of patrons, and that's going to potentially increase as the library's service expands. And I'm sure Tamika can talk a little bit about that during her presentation, what the expectations are for the use of the library. And then we also talk a bit more about the cafe space itself. We added something in there about if there's a vendor that comes in that really can't manage the tenant improvements at the onset, that the council may be open to having a conversation with that particular selected vendor about how to do that, maybe structuring an agreement in some way to pay that back over time or some way like that. We added that, we opened that door in the RFP so the vendor knows about that. There was some conversation with members of the council about modifying the criteria for review. And so you may want to make those comments this evening so we can take those notes and amend the RFP in that respect. And then the RFP would go out on the street by Monday. If there are particular vendors that you want us to target in addition to the open market, please send an email to me and I will make sure that Robert gets those and we can send them to them directly. I think there's actually a couple on the line this evening to maybe speak to the item. And then we get responses by March 8th, and it would be back on the council's agenda for approval of an agreement in April. That concludes the staff report.
Great. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions anyone from the council has?
Yeah, I have one. The mission of the organization in the scoring criteria, not for profit only, I'm confused about that. I didn't notice it earlier when I was looking at this.
That was one of the additions of the council on the original RFP, and it was to give vendors that have not-for-profit missions as part of their work in terms of where the revenue from the sales go, a priority rating. But you don't have to have that in there. You can remove it.
Okay. Okay, let me see if there's any public comment on this matter. If anyone has a public comment, you can click raising your hand in the reactions at the bottom of the screen.
And I see none, Mayor.
I don't either. Okay, I'll bring it back for comments from members of the council. Diana.
I think that getting this RFP out is a great idea, and the sooner the better, so that it can come online at the time that we're going to need it in summer when we start to launch and invite people to come in. And I'm also in favor of, as George alluded to, the idea of if a vendor were to propose that perhaps we could offer something like free rent or deferred rent for a while until they can make up some of the financials. So those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be able to negotiate with people to get the right vendor in.
Okay. Others? Elizabeth?
So I'll just tag on to what Councilmember Hawkins Manwellian was saying about the possibility of free rent. In the real estate world of renting space to food vendors or even other retailers, landlords are typically providing upfront, $25 a square foot, $50 a square foot for tenant improvements, and a number of months for free rent to get them up and running. I think that this I think that potential cafe operators in reading this are probably going to be put off quite a bit because they're not used to reading a government request for proposal, and it's quite regulated, and it doesn't, as a landlord, I'm always singing and dancing trying to get people to come and rent my space, and I'm razzle dazzling them because I want them, and then seeing their financial statement and stuff. But this is how we do it, and I think that if we can sweeten the deal a little bit, as Councilmember Hawkins Manwellian suggested, I think that we may have an opportunity to attract somebody.
Okay, Bill.
Sure. So first off, with regards to the topic that was just discussed, I would like to see the 2 or 3, whoever's going to bid on this thing, for them to make a proposal of what they would like to see, as opposed to us proposing something for them, because they may have some great ideas. I know that when we had the meeting with the caterer for the park, it was mentioned that they don't really know what the workload's going to be and how much traffic there's going to be. There's been discussion with others that say, well, there's an upfront investment for them as far as the equipment, and maybe they would like us to pay for the equipment and they can do something in the future. So I think it's important that they make a proposal, and they'll be I expect that they'd be very creative with regards to what they'd like to see and make a suggestion that perhaps we haven't thought of, as opposed to us, kind of driving it. George in his letter put out, a change in the evaluation matrix that, I provided that to him. I just thought that we should maybe change some of the weighting, the experience in running similar operations, go from 35 to 30, menu selection 35 to 30, and then increase the rent and revenue by that extra 10, move those 10 points down there. So we would evaluate on a long-term basis financially what that means for the town, even if it's just a break even, whatever the situation's going to be, but we will want to know what that is. And I think that should have a higher weighting than just 5.
Well, let me comment on that issue, because I think that the reweighting of the criterion is good. I'd make one further change. I'd actually push the rent and revenue proposal up to 20, and I'd take out the mission of the organization, the 5 points for a nonprofit. I don't think there's any value in giving 5 points to a nonprofit. I think the mission of the organization could be very valuable, and we should consider that in the course of anyone's response to the RFP. But I don't think that we should give 5 points to someone just because they're a nonprofit. And I do think that the revenue and rent share proposal should be higher. So I like to move it all the way to 20 and not just 15.
Yeah, it's important.
I also agree that the vendors should respond to us. I mean, the biggest attraction in offering this for a vendor that also does catering is they're going to have contacts with a lot of Atherton residents that come and use this, and they can offer their catering services to those residents privately. Many of us hire catering firms when we aren't in the middle of a pandemic to have parties. And I think that it should be an extremely attractive opportunity for anyone who runs that cafe. They're gonna run into a lot of residents because of it. And if they do a good job, I think they're gonna get an opportunity for significant business. Diana.
Well, I have a couple comments. I agree with a lot of what was just said. I want to remind us that when we put this bid out before, we had 0 people apply. I actually have a question as well. Is there anything that precludes us from doing just a revenue split? So if someone came back to us and said, let's do a revenue split as opposed to a tenant landlord, are we free for any kind of arrangement that's proposed, or are there limits to what we can accept?
They just have to make a proposal.
George, do you want to respond to that?
No, it's all within reason and what the council is willing to accept as a negotiated deal. We have a revenue split, or we had a revenue split with catering by Dana, the prior caterer at the park. And we have a different type of agreement with the current caterer at the park. So can happen.
Great. Okay, Elizabeth.
So I wanted to add on if there is a way that we could have design review over what type of interiors they want to install, because I think it's really important that we have something that looks good and is complementary to the environment. And and I'm just getting, I've got something in my throat, excuse me.
I think if the council wants to add that, that is something we probably should add within the RFP itself, so they're aware going in.
Great. Okay, Bob.
If the council supports that.
Yeah, I'm not a restaurateur or a cafe operator, but it's probably the businessman in me that tells me that I can't imagine you'll get any responses from anybody that has any business acumen to this proposal. And definitely a revenue sharing things as opposed to some sort of tenant rental arrangement could be a big enough lever to change that. I don't think the town really ever anticipated, budgeted, or needed rent from the space. We need the space, not the rent. A good functioning space. So rather than the kind of operators that I just think it's complicated enough that they're going to walk away unless we give them a little more guidance on what we mean by rent and revenue sharing and what we'd be willing to accept. If they knew it was purely revenue sharing and at a very modest amount, I think we have a chance to get some legitimate activity on this RFP, but otherwise I don't think so.
Great. Okay. Well, let me make one more comment, which is, I think that would be a good addition to the RFP to make it clear that we will consider different economic proposals, including a revenue share. I had mentioned to the city manager that the description of the cafe as a non-cooking environment needs to be expounded more. It's not clear exactly what that means. That I think that there are things that can be done in that space. Obviously, they can have a microwave in there. They can probably have, some kind of an electric heating element. They just can't have a hood. It doesn't. I think it's not a space where there can be a grill or a hooded required area. And I think that needs to be developed in the RFP a little bit. Diana, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share because I also am not a restaurant person, and I think most of us aren't. So to get perspective, I had heard one person discussing this and said that they would have to sell at least 50 cups of coffee a day to make it worthwhile to go in the space. So I just wanted to throw that out for everybody else's edification, because that was eye-opening to me to think about it that way. And the business has to, they'll have to buy the equipment to go in there and then try to pay the equipment back. So I'm glad that we're open to looking at different kinds of business models that might make it more feasible, because I do think this is important for us, for our own employees as well as the public.
Right. Elizabeth, did you want to finish? You kind of got interrupted.
I just about died. No, so, you know, our original concept, Mayor DeGoya, early on, and Vice Mayor Widmer, when we were working on this, was that we wanted a little coffee cafe that would serve muffins and scones and pastries and maybe pre-made sandwiches that, you know, you wouldn't be cooking the chicken and dicing it up and making the chicken salad, you know, behind the scenes there. But, you know, that kind of a thing to offer our residents coffee and, you know, maybe soft drink or, you know, tea, to have a coffee and a pastry or a snack on the terrace, and not a big food heavy, you know, plated lunch or something like that. And there are little coffee cafes like that around, that I think you know, we could model something after that. So I don't know. I just don't think that it is going to be a non-cooking environment, but, you know, of course, they could have like a countertop Breville oven, you know, to heat up something. But I think it's really a specialty coffee cafe kind of a thing. And I think 50 cups could potentially be sold on a day.
Okay.
Anyway.
George, you want to make a comment?
I actually wanted to bring up the RFP, but maybe Councilmember Hawkins Manuelian should go first before I do that.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Diana.
I just had a question. If one of the vendors were to propose getting a liquor license and offering wine and cheese, so I can picture having wine and cheese, you know, an event like that with wine and cheese. So you could go there for wine, like tasting. Would we allow that or not allow that?
I don't think we would allow that, although we do allow alcohol for special event activities. So if there were a special event permit, they might be able to do something like that, but a liquor license associated with the space isn't something within the town's zoning.
It's not within our zoning, so there's an actual reason why we couldn't do it.
Right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I could bring up the RFP itself and just talk about a couple of those remaining changes that you discussed so we can be clear on those.
Great.
So I think we have the criteria one down, but this is the rent paragraph, the highlighted section here. And it does talk about rent to be paid to the town in, you know, form of a percentage of gross receipts from all concessions or some combination of base rent plus a percentage of sales to be approved by the council. So does that need to be wordsmithed differently to make it a little clearer?
Well, I would add, George, the effectivity of such agreement, because as we've discussed, some of the people have talked about they would like to see how, you know, what the traffic really will be. And another one suggested, you know, they weren't sure exactly how much equipment they were going to need. So, they may want to say, well, it would become, here's our split, but it would become effective after 6 months or something like that.
Right. Well, that would be within their proposal that they would make to us for the sentence above it, considering partnerships to assist a vendor with build out of space. But I think this is more in relation to Bob's mention that it wasn't clear to the vendor that we would accept some sort of revenue split. Does it need to be modified in that further, Bob?
Yeah, I think so. I think it needs to include language that I mean, again, I don't know what kind of people are going to bid on this, but if it's a small entrepreneur, this paragraph is, it's a little beyond making a sandwich and a cup of coffee. They're not going to know how to respond to it, so they're going to throw the thing away. I mean, an example might be, free rent for 6 months and then such and such, or no rent, but pure revenue sharing or whatever.
So maybe put some hypotheticals in there as examples of potential partnership agreements.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, as well as maybe some language that makes it clear that the town's not trying to make money on this. This is not a money-making thing. We're looking for a good provider of comfort to all of us. So
I think we could probably wordsmith something to those effects. The other was design review at some section within this RFP advise the vendor that the town has review and approval authority over the ultimate build out of the space. Is that sort of what we're looking for?
I would agree to that.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then the last one was the description of the non-cooking environment. That's up here, this sentence here. Successful proposal will provide food and beverage items in a non-cooking environment throughout the day, as well as light fare, warming accessories, coffee makers, etc. Expanding on that language a little bit to talk about other types of food prep that are not cooktops and ovens and such.
Yeah, I would just be really clear that you're saying that there's no stovetop gas cooking or element with a hood that requires a hood, but a microwave or a countertop, oven.
So be very clear that this is not a catering kitchen and not a functional kitchen. It is a warming space, if anything, or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think to describe it as a warming space isn't very clear.
Right.
I think you could. I think you should say what there can't be. If the real issue, I think the real issue is regulations require certain cooking equipment to be hooded, and there's not a hooded possibility here. So.
Right.
However you want to say that, so it's good language. I think that's what should be communicated.
Okay, I think we got that. And then, so lastly, we did talk about the criteria for evaluation and modifying that. But it was just noted to me, following up on Bob's comment, that we're not looking for a revenue producer here. And we just upped the revenue rent share proposal, part of it, to 20. So if we want to de-emphasize the revenue or characterize it in a different way, maybe that we're looking for the best agreement for the town, not just in revenue, but in other opportunities or something like that. I guess what I'm saying is maybe we're putting that too high if our interest isn't money.
Right. I agree. I didn't say anything earlier when Rick was saying he wanted to increase that rent and revenue share proposal. I don't think that rent and revenue sharing is important at all to us at this point, because it's going to be a shoestring anyway. But I think I agree everything that Rick said about the opportunity. If they have an outside catering business to have other business opportunities from residents. Yeah, it's the quality, it's the quality of the work, of the food, of the specialty coffees. It can't be Nespresso. I don't know where we're going to find a place.
I think Councilmember Whitmer's got his hand raised to add. to
Go
that.
ahead, Bill.
I wouldn't want to eliminate that category because somebody may come back and propose a revenue share after a period of time. And so why would you want to disadvantage that proposal? So I think maybe it's not worth 20, but I do think it's worth, more than 5. So you put 10 down if you want, but I think it, seeing what their proposal is, I think is important for us to understand.
I agree with
That's
that.
my 2 cents. I understand what Bob said and what Elizabeth has endorsed, but I do think that we'll see what they have to say.
Bob?
So, Bill, I don't understand what you're saying. What would make you award them 5, 10, 15, 20 points? That they gave us a lot of money?
I would
what
want
are
to
you
see how
shooting for there?
I would want to see what they're proposing.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
This operator is not going to have, a really big business plan that says that they're going to be making, $300,000 a year and they'll revenue share with us.
Exactly.
No, but one of the a caterer, for example, that runs the park, when they were saying we'd like to, if we were to do something like that, for example, we would want to know, see what the traffic is for the first 6 months or a year, and then we would propose something. So they could write that in. We're willing to do some sort of revenue share if we see what the cap is, and after we evaluate what the traffic is after 6 months. That would be a higher than somebody just says, hey, I'm not going to give you any money, and it's just going to be, I'm going to be staffing this. So, that's
not what that would
Okay,
say.
hold on.
Yeah,
Diana has her hand up.
Yeah, I would like to propose that the quality of the work plan submitted should be the single highest thing that we evaluate, because that within that answers some of the other questions. What is the business plan? The quality of the work plan is also the rental share and the revenue. And so I would propose that we had the quality of the work plan being the single highest thing we rate them on. Second should be the product selection and quality, because we really want to have a quality vendor if we could. So those two to me are the 2 biggest things. The experience with similar operating, and I would say I would make that a lesser, but it should be there, because what if someone comes in, we had something like how many years experience? That would eliminate a lot of people there. And I don't want people to fall off just because they haven't been doing this for a really long time. And then the other that we already said, the mission, the organization for nonprofits going to go. And I think the rent and revenue really comes under the quality of the work plan submitted. So to me, it's those 3 items in that order: the quality of the plan, the menu and the items they're submitting, and then their experience and whether or not they can afford to put the money up to do this thing.
So Diana, would you say quality of work be like 40, and then the similar experience 30, and the menu 30? Or
I'd do the quality of the proposal, because that's kind of a catch-all.
Quality of proposal. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking.
The plan.
You got to put it back to what's currently in the RFP. Because he went to what was in his letter.
Right. So the quality of the work plan submittal, I read, the question is, what does that actually mean? I read that to be, how good is their business plan? Do we really think this is going to work? Because don't want to get somebody in there that buys all the equipment and fails. So the quality of the work plan submitted is a judgment call that's based on what their business plan is. Can they succeed in that spot, et cetera? So it's a bit of a catch-all.
Mhm.
And then, but also then to me, the second one below that, or maybe even the first or of equal value, is what they're selling. Because we do want to have a quality product there.
Right, the menu selection, that's also very important.
So what, yeah, that whole item right there should be, so quality of work plan and the menu selection to me are the top most important thing. And then secondarily would be the experience. And again, that has to do with both how many years they've run a restaurant. Because if the person's not really running a restaurant and they're going to Madame Colette's and buying pastries there at 3 a.m, and they have a robot machine or like one barista hand making coffee, they don't really need to have to be running a restaurant experience. And I don't want someone who's willing to make that investment fall off because they don't have, what did we have, 3 years or 5 years or some long thing. So that one I want to put way down. And then the last two, the rent revenue share and the mission organization, I'd take totally off. So to me, it's 3 things.
I agree with you. So,
Okay, Bob,
I tend to agree with what Diana's saying. I, at the risk of not wasting too much time, there's a tiny little space at the base of Santa Cruz Avenue next to Stax across from the B of A. I'm going to guess that most of you have been in there. It can't be 250 square feet. And the quality of the product and the vastness of their offerings is mind-boggling. And so a lot can be done in a tiny little space without a grill and a hood. And needless to say, I'm going to rush over there to get them to try and bid on this. But I think we need to make it clear that we want them to succeed and that we're not trying to make money, and scrap those 2 bottom items and rearrange those top 3 the way Diana and Elizabeth are suggesting.
okay. Well, I don't have any problem with that suggestion, but I do think quality of work plan submitted ought to be including any rent or revenue share proposal. So,
well, it probably would be. I mean, that's a work plan.
well, it's not unless it's explicit. It's not obvious. I think it's fine to put the rent and revenue possibility under the quality of the work plan. I have no problem with that. I think that does make sense. And I have no problem with making that 40 and making the
Menu
menu 35 and the experience less. I don't have any problem with that. But I do think we should say that the quality of the work plan submitted includes any rent and revenue share proposal.
How about any financial projections?
Well, it's
No,
not
the
projection.
projection is not how much rent or sharing they have.
You could still have rent revenue on there, just leave it at a 5 and divide everything else up amongst the other top 3 categories. That does show the vendor that that's not the highest importance.
Great idea.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask a question about, we're using the word work plan. Are we talking about a business plan? Is that what we're talking about? What is a work plan? I know it's a minor detail, but if you say it's a business plan, that makes assumptions of what it is that we're asking for. Why is it called a work plan? Is that something
I think
different?
it's a work plan because if you use a business plan, it becomes very,
Well, here's the definition.
it becomes very technical about we've seen all kinds of business plans in Silicon Valley, and there are good quality business plans and they're poor quality business plans. And we don't really care if this vendor is structuring this in a top quality business plan. We care about the quality of the work that they're proposing.
Do they give us a numbers? Do they give us a projection? Is it like a business plan? Like I'm going to spend
Diana?
X amount of money?
Diana, George has it up on the screen in this RFP.
Yeah, I'm reading what he's saying, but
Okay.
I'm asking when they submit their proposal, do we ask them to tell us how they expect to make money? Like, do we ask them to say, okay, I'm going to buy $225,000 worth of equipment that I'm going to pay back over X number of years? Do we ask any of that? Or do they just, as you say here, I'm describing my business plan. So that could be in, do we ask for
We're
numbers?
asking them for their market analysis, how they expect to be successful in this space. We're asking them for what their menu is going to be and what the pricing is going to be on their food items. And we're asking them to submit some sort of revenue share proposal to us so we can evaluate that component of it. Are basically the three things we're asking them for.
Okay.
See, this is kind of turned around because we should be selling them on what we believe the market analysis is going to be. You know, what we believe, you know, their demographic and their customer base is going to be, because we're creating it by having the library. It's not like it's at the corner of Santa Cruz and the alleyway there.
Yeah, they're not bidding on a commercial space. They're
right. So
yeah.
we're the ones that we should be saying, here's our preamble. This is going to be great, guys. You are going to have, you know, so many customers because this library is state of the art. This Newtown Center is going to be so flooded with residents coming and Athertonians coming and having your coffee and your pastries and wanting to have you cater a party for them. And there's no place in this RFP to say that, or we're
Well,
not
there's a
doing
place
it.
to say that. It just isn't said. Bob.
I agree with what Elizabeth said, and quite frankly, the more I've thought about it, I don't think we're going to get any bids again.
That's what I said.
I think if we outfitted the space ourselves,
Yeah,
it'd be a whole different ballgame.
I like that. I agree, because then we'd have control over it.
Well, plus it rules out the upfront
Yeah,
expense. I mean, Diana threw out $250,000, and I was trying to do the math in my head about how many cups of coffee it would take.
to repay that.
Yeah, so
I should clarify where that number's from.
that's so. I don't whether it's 50. I don't care if it's 25,000. It rules out a lot of aspiring young operators. So I'm not saying we want to give a contract to somebody who doesn't have, I don't want to use that phrase, who doesn't have any money. I'm just saying, I think this RFP is destined for failure in its present form.
I agree. But we're trying to wordsmith it, aren't we? It's going to become an
We're all
element.
wordsmithing it.
We are.
The number that I threw out is when I was at the airport, there's this new trend called Cafe X. And it's these little self-contained robot-based coffee shops. There's one in SFO. And it's a company that's funded by Coastal Ventures and a bunch of big VCs in Silicon Valley. And you walk up and there's a little robot and he waves at you. And they actually have very good quality coffee. So I looked at that thing, and to educate myself, I inquired about what their business model was and how much it cost. And they wrote back saying it was $225,000. And in that particular case, you had to buy all the equipment outright. So you're taking all the risk. And I don't know what the prices are. So that's why I threw that. That would be on the high end, because that's the whole thing all out. It's got everything. It's got the ordering thing and all the stuff. But if you regular equipment with a barista, you know, one shift barista is probably a lot less. I just wanted to get an idea because I really had no idea.
To Elizabeth's point, we're actually selling hype here. in terms of the space. We're trying to tell them what the expectation is for clients and customers, and hey, you might meet some people who might give you extra work and you get catering jobs in town. And we don't know any of that at present because nothing's fully completed. We got no build out of the space and the library's not open.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a cart before the horse thing here, but we also want to have the cafe open when the town center is fully complete. So
Yeah. So can you make that a separate paragraph so it's not buried in
Yeah.
a big paragraph?
certainly,
Maybe highlight it?
yeah, we can certainly do that in the background section.
And
If we don't get a bidder at all, could we consider buying the equipment and fitting out the thing and then just getting a vendor? Is that something the city could do if we want?
Or somebody could put that in their proposal that they want us to outfit it or pay for it to be outfitted.
it's our space. We can do anything we want with it.
But there's no reasons why the city could use public money to outfit the equipment in there. I just don't know. I'm
No,
asking.
no, of course we could do it. Of course.
All right. So if we got stuck, we can do it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, anyway. So I don't think this proposal is ready to be shipped out this weekend.
Yeah, but we want to do it as soon as possible. Let me just say that because of the time frame for build out and going in, we already have them coming in at the end of the summer and we're planning to open and have our big ceremonies before summer.
Understand,
So
understand.
So I think I think it needs to be massaged a little more. George, I think making a separate paragraph would be good. You're not marketing the potential catering opportunity that they would have to residents, which I think is something that anyone who focuses on would be attracted to, because anybody who comes in here is likely going to have some catering business.
Maybe, maybe not, you know?
No, the people that have talked to us there are three, they all have some catering business.
not one of them doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly wordsmith this a bit and bring it back to you again in February. That's not a problem. With respect to the grand opening activity in April, to the issue that, you know, we're cart before the horse and needs to be open, something needs to occur there. Maybe this is a space that needs to grow up as a coffee cart out on the deck and then figure it out as a cafe space. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's
That's
other
a
options.
good point.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, really good point. Okay, are we done?
Bob, did you want to make another comment?
I
Well,
hope so.
Well, one thought, and I promise not to say another word after this. Over at Menlo Clinic for a long time, they had a coffee cart, and actually it probably made some money. So that alternative might be good, but I was going back to how we're going to get this thing put in place and how much investment's necessary. And maybe we should specifically state that the vendors that we're going to front the equipment and they need to tell us what our budget needs to be to complete the space so it's ready for them to occupy.
Yeah, that's a little dangerous.
Well, why is it dangerous? We don't have to agree to it. But my point is, I'm trying to get away from the fact that they have to come up with whether it's Diana's 225,000 or whether it's 50,000. And again, emphasizing the fact that we own the space and we want it to be successful and we're not trying to make money. Relative to our budget, I'm guessing that what they would need is for us, would be a relatively small investment. That's all I have.
Yeah, because we've got the big bucks.
Well, why are we
Wordsmith
even
and bring it
renting?
back.
Okay. Well,
Forward to the next time we look at this.
yeah.
Me too, next time.
Maybe we could do it at the study session, George.
Same time
as
next
opposed-
year, okay?
If we can push it sooner, I would certainly vote for that. And if there's any way we could get to the point where they can just do the edits to what we've agreed to tonight, that would be better, because I'm going to push for the time, remind us of the time frame here.
Well, I think
This
that
has
needs
it
to
opening
be-
in August. Now we'll be,
We spent
now
an
it's
hour
gonna be
on this thing.
I don't think
There's-
it has to be done by April.
There's 3 big ticket items on your February 2nd study session agenda already. One of which is the mid-year budget report, the report on the communications drill, and then the landscape screening ordinance. So those are pretty hefty conversation pieces. If you add this to it, it's going to be a longer meeting.
Well, if you show us the track changes on it, we could probably just focus on those and get it done in 15 minutes, hopefully.
I would certainly love that because it's already proposed for August. If we push this off to February, now we're talking, September. And if it doesn't go on that next meeting, now you're talking about next fall.
It was proposed for April.
When it comes online.
Yes, April.
I thought isn't it that, can you put the dates up again on the screen?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry. You are correct. October.
Yeah, so now it's October now. So picture every time we postpone this by a month to get around to our thing, look at where that date's going for us.
Diana, I understand completely, but if you don't have a tenant, you don't have a tenant. And
okay, well, I guess
you're not going to have a tenant if you don't go out.
Right.
Sure.
Well,
we'll do a track change versions and put it on the February 2nd if we can get it there. And
all right, good. Thank you, George. Let's do the library
we
presentation.
can have a special meeting called.
We could also set up a subcommittee and approve it now, subject to the subcommittee's approval.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Awesome.
I vote that we have the mayor
Mona's
appoint
got
the
her hand up.
subcommittee.
Mona has her hand up.
There's a flag on the play.
Flag on the play.
Not necessarily, but if you want to do a subcommittee, then Mayor DeGolia, I recommend that you just appoint 2 people rather than have the council take action. If the council takes any kind of formal action, subcommittee is automatically a standing committee and you have Brown Act requirements.
All right, great.
But they would need to give direction this evening that the subcommittee has the authority to approve the RFP prior to its issuance.
Correct. But the selection of who those members are should be left free.
Yeah, it's up to the mayor, right?
Okay, so I need a motion approving the RFP subject to approval of changes that we've discussed as a future subcommittee would agree to.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, can we do a roll call, Anthony?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Polito.
Approved. Aye.
Hawkins. Thank you, Vice Mayor Widmer.
Aye.
It was, I'm sorry, I lost who voted, but I think I'm on Lewis.
Diana said yes.
Okay. I think I'm on Lewis and then we'll
Yes.
vote. Thank you. And then Mayor DeGolia, since I already heard Mr. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the library presentation. Hi, Tamika.
Hi, hi, Mayor DeGolia, and hi, City Council members and everyone that's present. Thank you for your time, and I apologize for being late. I did not realize the meeting was at 6. I had 7, but you have it. Okay, thank you. So just to start off, this is our annual report for 2021. And it's the next slide. Thank you. So we now have North Fair Oaks as a part of our system for a total of 13 branches. And some of you may know our library, the San Mateo County Library, started out or was formed as the County Free Library in 1912. The Library Joint Powers of Authority was formed in 1999. Today, each of our 13 libraries is part of a larger family, really just offering transformative experiences and making a space more inclusive and welcoming for everyone to come and join and be a part of our learning experience. The next slide, please. Yes, and so a summary of our demographics for the whole entire county is that we serve 283,997 people. And this, of course, the county's population, a total of 37%. And this is based off of our library card members. And Our population growth since 2012 has been 6%. And so this is just an overview of our demographics. But we've had the privilege of offering over 284,000 people live and in service services this past year. And so we want to share in on some of the successes that we've had. Of course, our vision and our mission. The vision of San Mateo County Libraries is to ignite growth through transformative experiences. The mission of San Mateo County Libraries is to strengthen our community by creating an inclusive sense of place and environment for learning. And so this past year, we saw 1.5 million items circulate, 2.1 million web visits, digital downloads of over 1 million. 75% of our population is now with library cards. And then we received a favorable rating of 93% from the surveys that we did this past year. And so the next slide. So locally, for Atherton area, of course, we have been working out of the temporary location, but we saw on average 2,600 or a little over 2,600 people visiting us for curbside visits. And we had over 4,000 of our materials that circulated, and that included, of course, we have Wi-Fi hotspots. We have combos, which are hotspots, which provide Wi-Fi services free to the community. And the combos include a laptop. So we saw a lot of circulating of those materials as well as our books. And that was just this past year. The next slide. And so our staff, the ingenuity and the thoughtful mobilization resulted in many new and reimagined services. There are so many wonderful accomplishments to be proud of. And so I'm excited, of course, to highlight those today. The next slide. And so we hosted over 1,000 virtual events, and we have a YouTube channel that saw over 25,000 or people viewed our materials or our videos over 25,000 times. Many of our programs were offered in language other than English and in multiple languages, making them, it was in an effort to make our services more open to the community. And we saw more people using these services as well. Staff innovated ways to educate and entertain kids, teens, adults through high quality virtual experiences. The next slide. In the staff, we served over 600 people, specifically seeking tech assistance or help sessions that we hosted. We had over 2,000 of our laptops and hotspots that were checked out, over 2 million, actually 2.7 million wireless sessions that were provided. Our ongoing commitment to closing the digital divide is stronger than ever. When schools closed, we immediately increased the number of Wi-Fi hotspots that we had to offer. And we worked with some of the local schools throughout the county to provide a large portion of them to students that were in need. And we also work with some community partners that had that knew of families that needed the equipment as well. We invested in digital literacy efforts. Staff began providing one-on-one tech support through Zoom and through our workforce development program. Again, our commitment to making our libraries equitable for all was strengthened through staff equity trainings and new equity author series that we provided. Additional author visits throughout the year supported community growth, understanding, and dialogue. We hosted over 55,000, we provided over 55,000 book giveaways for the authors that were a part of our virtual series. 77% of our patrons believe the library support communities of color. And this was learned through, again, the surveys that we did this past year. some ways that we've worked to uplift our communities, the curbside visits throughout the county, we hosted or provided over 186,000 and over 33,000 customer service or customer care connections. And what that is we now have a 1-800 in essence number where anyone in the county or anywhere can contact us and they can reach any of us during our times of operation. And they're able to get, whether it's telephone reference, they're able to request printouts if they're sending it through email to us. There is a host of services we've been able to connect with people through our customer care line. And some of our locations offered over 35,000 meals to families and youth. We also offered free printing and 3D printing services and continued our meal program during the pandemic. We just changed the service up and made it more of a pickup to go meals. The next slide. Thank you. So in addition to providing new and unique services during the past year, we also spent many months preparing plans to safely open. And here's a short video that captures the excitement and enthusiasm from the day. I think it was the last slide. If you click at the bottom, I'm sorry.
So Tamika, I only got the PDF, and the PowerPoint may have had an embedded video. So if there's a way that I can get that from the website, maybe. Otherwise, I only got the PDF.
Oh, would you? Okay, let me share my screen.
Sure.
Sure, right quick. Sorry, I didn't realize that. And this was at our Foster City location. Thank you. Anthony, I have another video I'll show from here. So this is just showing some of the images from some of the kids that were receiving free books from us during the summer. And this is at our North Fair Oaks Library. This is the new Brisbane Library that was open in April of last year, which is a new facility, and the community embraced it and has been using it doubled based on our circulation and our patron count than what they were using our library before. This is inside the community space. With the COVID-19 really taking a toll on the youth learning, we felt it was useful for us to help and assist with the families. In particular, we focused on youth of color. With our history as leaders during the summer and the encouragement of our governing board to think big, we developed and succeeded in a robust set of positive interventions. We developed library explorers, an in-library camp experience offered to our families to create. It was called a Creates, in essence, a STEM program. It was over 5 weeks during the summer, provided to a little over 1,000 youth. And with that, another video.
Summer experiences help sustain.
Just want to note if there's audio, we're not hearing it.
You're not able to hear the audio?
No.
No, it started, you could hear something, but then it faded away.
I'm sorry, let me.
And I can plan to get these videos from you and share them with council and then post them also on our website for the public as well.
Thank you.
Include singing our alphabet.
We can hear that.
Getting that.
And story time.
Awesome.
I'm ready for school. I love school. I love reading books. I'm learning to read.
Afternoons are for curriculum centered around science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
I like learning math. And I love doing the number practice. The Big Lift Inspiring Summers program has been able to transform our early learning and reverse summer learning loss before the new school year begins.
All morning she say, Mom, I want to go to the kindergarten in Big Lift.
You could just see the change in her, how much fun she had being here every day. She would actually wake up on time, get ready, go to school. There's a new confidence in her.
I think it's just a really great start for school because he's going to be going into kindergarten, and instead of having any trepidation, he's excited and enthusiastic and confident that he's going to have a good time. The kids aren't being warehoused, they're being schooled, and I think that makes a huge difference, and it's been really wonderful.
The environment is safe and he's happy. That's all that matters to me. He likes to come to school.
Big Lift have helped him to know what school is going to be when he starts kinder. He's starting to, little by little, kind of be more independent, which is good. And he's learning, which is the best part. He's having fun while learning.
I just want to thank all of the teachers, the staff. They're all super, super great. I cannot speak enough of how welcoming and how kind all of them are.
I think he will be ready for kindergarten. I think he's ready for school.
The Big Lift Inspiring Summers is making a difference.
Thank you, Big Lift.
Thank you, Big Lift. Thank you, Big Lift.
Gracias, Big Lift.
Thank you, Big Lift. Thank you, Big Lift. Will you lift with us?
Lift with us.
Lift with us. Lift with us. Lift with us.
And with that, again, these are just some of our accomplishments. We've been excited, honestly, to offer the different programs and to create and offer the new opportunities that we've done. With that, it's just a summary of some things to come. We're opening the Atherton Library, hopefully in a couple of months. We're working towards really just imagining how the space will look and the services will be provided. We've also now working towards the East Palo Alto and the Pacifica Library, them getting new libraries. We're refreshing all of our library interiors and constructing new maker spaces at the Foster City, Millbury, Belmont, and we'll soon be presenting our Maker Mobile. We're increasing digital equity through the increase in databases and online services and supporting critical out of school hours and returning to our pre-pandemic hours soon. And so I would just like to thank you all for your time. And of course, our library staff for their tremendous work and creativity. The friends of our libraries, they've been very dedicated and advocates for our services and our resources. And of course, the cities that we work in, the cities, the staff, the city councils that we work with, and the ongoing support, we're really appreciative of that. And so again, just thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to either email me or ask me tonight.
Don't do that. Oh, shit. Diana.
Yes, I have two quick questions. One, what percentage of the libraries have maker spaces? Are we one of the few, or are most of them now getting them?
Most of them are getting them. So if they can, the ones that are being worked on, Foster City, Millbury, Belmont, it has somewhat of a maker space and some of the equipment, but those are the ones that will be getting the maker spaces.
And my second question is, when we open our library, are the programs that are offered, the classes and all of that, determined by our local library, or is that all planned by the whole San Mateo Library District?
Both. So we have a centralized programming, and usually what they do is create themes for our months. They also provide lists of performers or providers that we can choose from. And then the staff within the branch, we're usually working on like the story times, some crafts, and then so it's between both the locally and as well as central.
So in the case of the maker space, is there a set vendor that that offers the classes and the training and the insurance for the kids who cut their fingers off and stuff like that? Sorry.
We're hoping that never happens. But, it's actually the staff that works. We have a lot of tech savvy staff. We all receive training on like the 3D printing equipment, the virtual reality equipment that we'll host, and then sewing. We'll have sewing machines, and we're working on being one of the locations that have an embroidery machine. But we have staff that is really savvy in a lot of this technology, and so we're the ones that's doing it. And sometimes we get volunteers from the community that have an interest and is a hobby, and they're really great at it, and they will come in and volunteer and offer workshops.
Awesome, great, and thank you. The video was super cute. I love what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill.
Tamika, thank you very much for sitting out and making sure we got the presentation. I think that I've sat through a number of these presentations from the library over the years, and this one was really uplifting. You're doing a lot of great stuff, a lot of new stuff, and congratulations to y'all. And I think it's going to be just even better once we have our new library here. So again, thanks a lot, and congratulations to the total library staff here as well as in San Mateo County. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamika. For anybody who hasn't been to an inspiring summer activity at the library, we haven't been able to go for the last 2 years, but I've been to 2 of them, and they are remarkable. I mean, it came through strong in the video, but it is so much stronger than what came through in the video. You have these little kids, and they're very actively interested in fairly profound issues that they're exploring, either science or human interest issues, and they refer to one another as scholars. And it's so cute. It's really incredibly uplifting. I highly recommend attending one of those sessions once we're able to do that and we're through this pandemic. So I think unless anybody has any further comment, our meeting is over. Okay, thank you, everybody. We will be in touch.
We do need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second. Thank you, Tamika.